I hope all of you can see my screen. Can someone unmute and tell me whether you can see the screen or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, that's all right. Okay, so quickly we'll recapitulate what we did in our last class, and we'll try to end our course on vectors, the preliminary concepts of vectors that we need for this course in the second semester on electrostatics, so that from next week we can start electrostatics. Okay, so please don't unmute yourself, it is very disturbing. No one is supposed to unmute when I am trying to tell you something. Okay. We had started vector differentiation, and we saw that ordinary vector differentiation is pretty much like scalar differentiation, only now we have a vector obviously which is no longer a constant. It is dependent on some parameter. As here you can see, the vector r is dependent on the parameter u. This parameter can be the space coordinates, it can be time, etc. Okay. So here we see that the vector is dependent on a single scalar variable u, and then the definition of differentiation of a vector or derivative of the vector with respect to that parameter u is pretty much like what you studied in your class 2 in calculus about ordinary scalar variables. All right. So suppose you have a vector ru which originates at this point O, and then you have another vector which we get by changing the parameter u by an infinitesimal amount delta u, so that the new vector is here at r u plus delta u. Okay. So by triangle law of vector addition, we can see that this vector joining the tips of these two previous vectors is given by delta r. Alright, so the derivative of the vector r with respect to the parameter u is simply dr du is limit delta u tends to 0, r at u plus delta u minus r at u divided by delta u. Alright. So basically the derivative is another vector dependent on u, and if the derivatives can be obtained for higher orders, you can get d2r du2, d3r du3, etc. Alright. Some examples, and I showed you how this derivative basically represents the space curve, and then how uh, by definition we get velocity from position. And then acceleration from velocity, and so on and so forth. All right. Then we spoke about partial derivatives of vector. Remember, we said that if we have a vector which is not dependent on just a single parameter, but on more than one parameter. For example, here we have the vector A, which depends on all the three space coordinates x, y, and z. Then how do we define the partial derivatives? When we are differentiating the vector A with respect to x only, keeping y and z constant. So although the vector A depends on all three parameters x, y, and z, but when I am taking the partial derivative of A with respect to x, I will be treating y and z as if they were constants. Okay. So this is the mathematical definition, and to distinguish between total derivatives and partial derivatives, we write the total derivative as d, and for partial derivative we use this curved sort of a d which we call del. So when we say del a del x or del a del y or del a del z, it means partial derivative. Okay, and obviously you would then understand that the vector is not dependent on just a single variable but more than one variable. and we are taking partial derivative with respect to one of them, keeping the others constant. And then we did an example which most of you were able to answer. You gave the answers for the partial derivatives of these values that we did. And some other properties of partial derivatives, for example, you can take higher order derivatives. Then if you have taken del A del Y, you can then differentiate it with respect to x so that you get del 2A del x del y. Okay, and if the derivatives of the second order are continuous, then usually del 2A del xy is equal to del 2A del y del x. Okay, so, and these are two more properties of partial derivatives which you just need to know, because we are going to apply them in other formulae that we are going to derive later on. Now, more important than the ordinary derivative or the partial derivative is the vector differential operator that I introduced to you in the last class, and that we are going to elaborate on in this class. Okay, so basically, knowing what differentiating a vector is and knowing what partial derivative of a vector is are the stepping stones to understanding what a vector differential operator is. Okay, so this is the representation of the vector differential operator in the Cartesian coordinate system. This is called the del operator. Okay, and as I told you that if you do not give the vector sign on this Greek symbol here, then it doesn't mean anything. Only this Greek symbol, which is the alphabet nabla, with the vector sign on top, represents the vector differential operator. Without the vector sign, it is just the Greek letter nabla. It does not represent anything. Okay, so when you are writing your papers, please remember that if you are using the del operator or this vector differential operator, you must not forget to give the vector sign on its head. So this is the vector differential operator in the Cartesian system, given by del del x I cap plus del del y j cap plus del del z k cap. As you can see, I have not used the equal sign, but I have used the equivalent sign, because this is the look of the operator. This is the form of the operator. It has not been operated on any function as yet. Okay, when it does operate on some function, we will see what happens. So we saw that there are three primary operations that can be performed by this del operator or the grad operator. Okay, what are they? First, grad phi or del phi. So when this operator is acting on a scalar function, so phi here is a scalar function, all right, function of x, y, and z, of course. Then we get what is called a gradient. So the del operator operating on a scalar phi results in a vector, grad phi, and that operation is called the gradient. We take the gradient of the scalar. What that means, we'll see in a few moments. When it operates on a vector, it can operate in two ways. You can either take its dot product with a vector so that the result will be a scalar, and that is known as the divergence, or you can take its cross product with a vector so that the result is a vector, and this is known as the curl. Okay, so there are three primary operations that can be performed by the del operator. One, it can operate on a scalar resulting in a vector called the gradient. On a vector, it can operate in two ways. One, if you take the dot product, you get a scalar, and the result is called the divergence of the vector. And two, you can take its cross product with the vector. The result is also a vector, and we are taking the curl of the vector. Okay, so gradient, divergence, and curl. And we just touched upon what fields are, because I told you that from now on, whatever variables we are using, whether it be a vector or a scalar, since we are going to differentiate the function, or we are as a next step we will be integrating the functions, they are no longer constant. So we are not talking about vectors of the form, 3 I cap plus 4 j cap plus 6 k cap. We are talking of vectors which are functions of the space coordinates. Okay, so these such, someone has unmuted, can you please mute? Do you have any question? So when we encounter physical quantities which have different values at different points in space, and the value of that physical quantity depends on where you are measuring it, we call it a field. And I gave you the examples of temperature, electric field, gravitational force, velocity of a flowing liquid, etc. Okay. So I won't repeat this anymore, just telling you that the term field is used to mean both the region and the value of the quantity in that region. Okay, I talked about this in a little elaborate fashion. I remember telling you how the temperature in a room will vary from one point to another on a hot day, or when the AC is on in a very big room with a large number of people. And that is how I try to explain what a field is. Okay, if the physical quantity in question is a scalar, it is a scalar field. If it is a vector, it is a vector field. Okay, so this is not really required gravitational potential energy example of a scalar field, so we just skip this. Okay, so we'll directly go to what a gradient means. So let's talk about the gradient now. I told you there are three principal operations of the del operator, the first one being the gradient. Okay, so here we take phi, function of x, y, z, which is a scalar field. So it can be the gravitational field, it can be the temperature of a particular body, which varies from one point to another. So it is defined at each point x, y, z in a certain region of space. And remember that it is differentiable at each point in a certain region of space. Alright. So then the gradient of the function phi x, x, y, z, also called grad phi x, y, z, is defined like this. Okay. Grad phi equal to, so this is the grad operator operating on the function phi, so that grad phi, now I can write equal to del phi del x I cap plus del phi del y j cap plus del phi del z k cap. So if phi is a function of x, y, z, you can see that the I component or the x component is a partial derivative with respect to x. The y component is a partial derivative with respect to y, and the z component is a partial derivative with respect to z. Okay, so this is how you get the gradient of a function phi. Now remember, the function phi was a scalar, but clearly when you take its gradient, it has clear components along the I, j and k directions, right? So the gradient of the scalar function is clearly a vector. So basically the grad operator, when operating on a scalar function, converts it into a vector function. All right. So that's what I told you here. Grad phi is a vector field. The grad operator converts a scalar field into a vector field. For example, suppose phi x, y, z, just a second, is this function here, x square, y square, z square. All right. So what will be grad phi? Can someone calculate and tell me? Can you just quickly take a pen and paper and calculate grad phi using this formula and tell me what grad phi is?
2x y square z square I cap
Yes.
plus x square 2y z square j cap plus x square y square 2z k cap.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So that is grad phi for you. Now, it is a very, very common mistake that I see in answer papers, that when the question asks to calculate grad phi, people forget to write I cap, j cap, k cap. When the question asks to calculate divergence, which we'll soon see is a scalar, people give I cap, j cap, k cap. So please, this just shows that the student has not practiced at all, and this is very easy stuff, very simple stuff, and you don't get very, in the general course you are not given much difficult functions to take the derivatives of. It is just the questions are given just to see whether you have the basic knowledge, whether you know what grad phi is, whether you know the fact that grad phi is a vector, whether you know the fact that divergence of a vector is a scalar. Okay, so these are very simple. You just need to go through this 2-3 times and you will know what it is. But if you just sit with it right at the time of the exam, keeping in mind the fact that you can look up a book, then there are chances that you get confused. Okay? Even if you copy from someone else's answer script, you have a chance of getting confused because you yourself don't know what is right and what is wrong. So when you are copying, if the person has done something wrong, then I get to see that wrong answer in 10 more copies, because these 10 people have copied from someone and they themselves don't know what is right and what is wrong. So they have copied the wrong thing. Okay. So this is something that I mean, this is just my advice to you, just that even though you know that most probably this time also you're going to give an online examination, but even then, please stay in touch with the topics that you are being done, that are being done in class. Teachers are taking some pain to prepare these slides, taking the classes, trying to give to you whatever is possible within these limited conditions. So please just, the sources are available to you, just go through them a little bit so that you at least don't copy wrong in your exams. All right. Okay. So how to find, now we'll just go through a little bit of a variety of problems, numericals, that can come for gradient. So for example, how to find grad r, where r is the magnitude of the position vector. Okay, so this r means magnitude of the position vector, which is root over x square plus y square plus z square. Okay, so what does grad r mean? See, I will be giving you these slides in the LMS, and in these slides every step has been done, not a single step is skipped. Okay, so if you go through these slides and if you just for once or twice take a sheet of paper and pen and work them out yourself, you all know how to differentiate, that is sufficient. Okay, but that much you have to do, that much effort you have to give. Okay, so for example, grad r means r is the function here. Okay, so what we were doing with phi, now r is that function phi. So del x of root over x square plus y square plus z square I cap plus del y of root over x square plus y square plus z square j cap plus del z of root over x square plus y square plus z square k cap. So now I have given you all the steps here. So grad r equal to, what will be del x of this? You take partial derivative of this function here with respect to x, keeping y and z, treating y and z as constant. So what will that be? This is basically x squared to the power half. So half into 2x multiplied by this whole function to the power minus half, right? I hope you can understand what is being done here. This is simple differentiation. So this is root over this function. So half into 2x root over to the power half minus 1. So that gives you minus half. Similarly for this, half into 2y, this whole function to the power half minus 1, that is minus half. And same with z here. Okay, so to the power minus half means 1 by root over this function, and 2 cancels in all the three terms. So the first term comes out to be x by root over x square plus y square plus z square I cap. Second term comes out to be y by root over x square plus y square plus z square j cap. And third term, sorry, this will be z. Okay, I'll just change it right now because otherwise I'll forget. Just a second. Okay. So z by root over x square plus y square plus z square k cap. Now, so you see the denominator is the same, and what is the numerator? X I cap plus y j cap plus z k cap, which is nothing but the vector r, and downstairs in the denominator, this is nothing but magnitude of the vector r. So if you take gradient of the magnitude of the position vector r, what you get is r by r cap, which is the unit vector along the vector r, the position vector r. Okay, so this is a very, very important example of how you can take gradient of the position magnitude of the position vector of r. You can't take gradient of the position vector because gradient is possible only for a scalar. So gradient of the magnitude of the position vector gives you the direction along which the position vector is, that is the unit vector. Okay. How to find grad of r square? Similarly, I will not now explain all the steps, but in a similar fashion you can find out grad of r square, which gives you 2r. Okay, sorry, again there is a mistake over here. Just a second, because I'll forget these mistakes, and then the file that I will upload will continue having the mistakes. Okay, so it is better that I make the corrections now so that you get the presentation with no mistakes in it. Okay, so basically we have this answer: grad of r square, just magnitude r square, gives you 2r or 2r r vector. Okay, so when you take the gradient of some function of the position vector, you will get another function of the position vector along the direction of the position vector. So we will find out a general formula for gradient of any function of r. This is again a very important formula which we will be applying, you will be required to apply in several places. Okay, so just follow the steps, and it will help you even if you get some problem of this kind in the exam. Okay, typically comes as a 2-mark problem in the objective part. So suppose you are asked to find gradient of some function of r. F r can be anything. It can be r square, it can be log r, it can be 1 by r cube, anything. Okay, so we'll find the general formula, so that whatever form of f is given, you can find out the value of gradient of f. So according to definition, it is del f del x I cap plus del f del y j cap plus del f del z k cap. So what do? We just rewrite these function as del f del r into del r del x, del f del r into del r del y, del f del r into del r del z. And we take df dr common. Okay, so this is how I have split each of the components, and I take df dr common. I write df dr as f primed r, first derivative of f with respect to r, and inside I am left with this. Now I have already calculated this when I was doing grad of magnitude of r. Okay, so once again doing the calculation in the same manner, what we get is grad r equal to f primed r vector by mod r vector, or f primed r cap. So in general, if you are asked to find the gradient of any function of r, you will see that the result is first derivative of the function with respect to r multiplied by the unit vector along r. This is the formula. How will this help you? So if you get a problem like this, find grad f when fr is 1 by r. Okay. So I am giving you 3 problems, 3 forms of FR. Can you quickly use the formula and tell me what the answers will be? I'll show you the formula once more. This is the formula. Write it down somewhere. Grad f equal to f primed r cap. Okay. And now you have to find the value when fr is 1 by r. So what will be grad of 1 by r? Quickly. Yes. Come on, this is very easy. Someone unmute and tell me.
First one will be minus 1 by r cube.
And the vector? You're taking gradient, there has to be a vector. Formula is f primed r r cap. This is the formula. So minus 1 by r square r cap, 1 by r. So f primed r will be minus 1 by r square and r cap. Similarly, fr is ln r. So grad f will be f primed r is 1 by r and r cap. Fr is r to the power n. So f primed r is n r to the power n minus 1 and r cap. So you see, although we took some time, it took a few steps to find out the formula for grad f, but once you know the formula, this becomes just a single step problem, because given a function, you know how to take its first derivative, right? So it becomes very simple. You don't have to go through the cumbersome process of finding out the derivative of root over x square plus y square plus z square, etc. So if it is a 2-mark problem, all you have to do is you have to say that we know grad of f equal to f prime dot r cap. Here fr is this or this or this or whatever is given. Therefore, use the formula and find the answer. All right. Okay. Now we will not do the physical interpretation of gradient because it is not there in your syllabus really. Okay. But these will be there in the, I will not delete these from the slides that I upload in the LMS. This I'll do. The geometrical significance of we'll see what the geometrical significance of the gradient is. We just mechanically did the problems on gradient. We'll see what geometrically the gradient means. Okay. Suppose we have the equation of a surface of this form, phi xyz equals to constant. Okay. What do I mean when I say this represents a surface? For example, all of you know that ax plus by plus cz equals to constant is the equation of a plane. So this is of the form phi xyz equal to constant, or x square plus y square plus z square equal to c is equation of a sphere. So again we have an equation of the form phi xyz equals to constant. All right. So we can generally say that any equation of the form phi xyz equals to constant actually represents a geometrical surface. It may be a plane, it may be a sphere, it may be an ellipsoid, different surfaces. All right. So since phi is a constant, therefore d phi is 0. Okay. Now if you go back to the slide containing the properties of partial derivatives, we saw that for phi equal to phi xyz, we can write d phi equal to this, del phi del x dx plus del phi del y dy plus del phi del z dz. So d phi equal to 0 means this right hand side equal to 0. Now I can write this as, I just elaborate this, okay. I do a little bit of manipulation and I write this as a dot product of two vectors. Del phi del x I cap plus del phi del y j cap plus del phi del z k cap and dx I cap plus dy j cap plus dz k cap. Okay. See, if you take the dot product of these two, you will get back these. So this means this dot product equal to 0. Now what is this representing? What does this expression represent? Grad phi. And what does this expression represent? Dr. So this means grad phi dot dr equal to 0. Okay. Now dr is a vector which will always lie on the surface. Since r is a position vector, therefore dr will be a vector which will always lie on the surface. Okay. And dot product of two vectors equal to 0 means the angle between them is 90 degree. Remember, dot product equal to 0 means the cosine is basically equal to 0. That is the definition of dot product. Now cosine of what angle is 0? Cosine of 90 is 0. It means that the angle between grad phi and dr is 90 degree, which means that grad phi is a vector which is normal to the given surface at a specified position. So if you are given a surface and you are asked to find the normal to the surface at a particular position, then all you have to do is find out the gradient at that position. Okay, so the geometrical interpretation of the gradient is that the gradient represents the normal to a surface at a given position. Okay, for example, this is a surface. Okay, x square y plus 2xz equal to 4. The problem asks you to find a unit normal to this surface at the point 2 minus 2, 3. So what do you have to do? This is the equation of the surface. So you find grad phi. I've already given you the formula to find out grad phi. This is in terms of x, y, z. So you need to find the components by partially differentiating first with respect to x, then with respect to y, and then with respect to z. So this is the value of grad phi that you get. Next, you find grad phi at this point, 2 minus 2, 3. So in place of x, you put 2, in place of y, you put minus 2, and in place of z, you put 3. Okay. So putting the values, this is the expression of grad phi that you get, minus 2 I cap plus 4 j cap plus 4 k cap. Now it has asked you to find the unit normal. So this is just half the answer. To find unit normal, what do? Grad phi by mod grad phi. So minus 2 I cap plus 4 j cap plus 4 k cap divided by root over 2 square plus 4 square plus 4 square, which gives you plus minus 6. Okay. Now this plus minus is very important because root over 36 means plus or minus. Alright. So there can be two directions of the normal to any given surface. There can be an outward normal and an inward normal. So for any given surface, you have to consider both the normals, and so when you are asked to find the unit normal, then giving the plus minus sign is very, very important. Okay. Problem we'll skip. We'll go to the divergence. Okay, so we saw what gradient is. Now we will see what the divergence of a vector is. So if a vector is given by v1 I cap plus v2 j cap plus v3 k cap, where of course v1, v2 and v3 are functions of x, y, z. So this is a vector field. Then the divergence of this vector field is defined as divergence v equal to the grad operator dot product with the vector. Okay, so this is the divergence of the vector. del v1 del x plus del v2 del y plus del v3 del z. So basically you just have to take the partial derivatives of the components of the vector. The x component you have to partially differentiate with respect to x, the y component you have to partially differentiate with respect to y, and the z component you have to partially differentiate with respect to z. That's all. As you can see, the result is a scalar. There is no unit vector associated. The divergence of a vector is always a scalar. This is a dot product. You have to remember that dot product always gives us a scalar. Okay, so divergence of a vector is always a scalar. So for example, if the vector v is like this, 2x square y I cap minus xy cube z j cap plus z to the power 4 k cap, then its divergence is this 4xy no I cap minus 3x y square z and plus 4z cube. Just keep in mind that your natural tendency is to retain the I cap, j cap and k cap, but remember in divergence there is no I cap, j cap, k cap. Divergence is a scalar quantity. It is converting a vector into a scalar. Okay, gradient is a vector obtained from a scalar. Divergence is a scalar obtained from a vector. Please, just bore this into your heads. Gradient is a vector obtained from a scalar. Divergence is a scalar obtained from a vector. The moment you write I cap, j cap, k cap here, answer 0, even if you have written the components right, because a vector as a result of a divergence doesn't make any sense. Okay, so this is a scalar. I'm just trying to emphasize this several times by repeating this so that you don't forget. But even after doing this every semester, I see that most of the students forget this. Okay, so similarly you can find divergence of R. Very simple. X I cap, Y j cap, Z k cap. Can you quickly tell me what is the result? Divergence of R, what will be the result? Just use the formula. Yes?
Ma'am, 3.
Yes, 3. 1 plus 1 plus 1. Del x plus del y plus del z del z. 1 plus 1 plus 1, 3. Simple as that. Okay? Okay, once again, I will not go through this. I will not go through the steps, but if you are asked to find the divergence of a general function of R, then this is the formula. Okay, these steps will be there for you to follow, so you can follow them, but this is the result that you require. Divergence of a general function of R into R vector is thrice the function plus f primed R. So you can use this formula to find out the divergence of any general function. All right. Now, physical interpretation of divergence, just like we saw that the geometrical interpretation of gradient was the normal to a surface, right? Similarly, we will see here that when we are talking about divergence, we actually mean the flux. Okay, so why is the divergence a scalar? It is because it is giving us the flux, the rate of things moving per unit area through a certain point. Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with the direction of movement. It just gives us the rate of flow of movement of certain thing when it is flowing through a certain point. I will not go through the derivation of this. This is for the honor students, but all this detail you don't require. Just remember that if the divergence of a vector is greater than 0, it indicates the presence of a source. So what do I mean that mean when I say that divergence means flux? It means that suppose we will require this interpretation when we do electrostatic field. That is why I am telling you. Suppose think about a movie hall. Okay, although we have stopped going to movie halls for a long time now and we don't know when we'll go back. So let's imagine there is a movie hall, and suppose I tell you that the flux of audience coming out from the movie hall is very high at 6 p.m. Okay, have all of you heard what I said? The flux of people coming out from the movie hall is very high at 6 p.m. So what will you interpret? That in all probabilities a particular show ends at 6 p.m. and all the people come out through the gates at 6 p.m. So which is why the number of people, the crowd of people coming out through the gates at 6 p.m. is very high. Okay, so if you go to the movie hall, say at 6:20, okay, 20 minutes after the show has ended, even then some people will still come out, people who who stayed back looking at the posters maybe, or having some cold drinks or having some popcorn, and they slowly came out. They waited for the crowd to move out and then they are coming out. So even then you will find people coming out, but the number of people coming out through the gates is much less. So the moment the show ends, if the number of people coming out per unit time, per unit area through the gate, if that is 100, then say 20 minutes later, it will probably be 10. So that is what I mean when I say flux. Okay. Or suppose, now I gave you the example of people coming out through a movie hall because that's a very relatable example. But of course, when we do physics, we are not going to calculate flux of people coming out of a movie hall. We will be calculating flux of other quantities. For example, when there is an electric field, electric fields are represented by electric lines of force, right? So if I tell you that the flux of electric lines of force is very high at this point, say at the point XYZ, at the point P whose coordinates are XYZ, the flux of electric lines of force is very high. What would you understand? You would understand that the number of lines of force passing per unit area per unit time through an area around that point P at XYZ is very high. There are large number of lines of force through that, which means that the intensity of the electric field at that point is very high because the number of lines of force is very dense. Okay, so that is what I mean by flux. Eventually, when I will talk about flux, whether a flux is high at a point or the flux is not very high, low at a point, it would mean that the intensity of the field is high or not so high at that point. Okay, now coming back to this, when I say that the divergence of a field of a vector is greater than 0 at a point, okay. Now by flux, as you have understood, that it is the number of particles or people or lines of force moving through a particular area. So there are people inside the movie hall, and then there is a gate, and then there are people coming out through that gate. Okay. Now if that gives you the flux. Now if this flux is greater than 0, what does that mean? It means that the number of people who had entered the movie hall through another gate and the number of people that are coming out are not equal. So the number of people who are coming out is more than the number of people who had entered. Okay. So suppose there is a room with 2 doors. I tell you that there is a room with 2 doors, and the number of people that entered through the first door is 10, but the number of people who came out through the second door is 15. What would that mean? That the number of people who are coming out of the room is more than the number of people who had entered the room, right? Now, how can that happen? If there are only 2 doors to the room and the number of people who entered is less than the number of people who are coming out, is it possible? When will it be possible that the number of people coming out is more than the number of people that entered? When will that be possible? Can someone tell me? Yes?
Ma'am, please repeat again.
Yes, I am telling you. If someone is unmuted, please mute him or her, whoever is unmuted. Suppose I tell you, so the first line says, see here, the flux is greater than 0. Okay. Now what is flux? Number of, if we still carry on with our example of number of people. Okay. So flux means number of people coming out through the gate, right? So if I tell you that there is a room where there are 2 doors, one door through which people come into the room and another door through which people come out. And I tell you that the number of people who came into the room was 10 and the number of people who came out through the second door is 15. So the number of people who that are coming out is more than the number of people who came in. Is it possible if there are only 2 doors that the number of people coming out is more than the number of people coming in? When is that possible? When will that be possible? যতজন ঢুকছে,
if people are entering from the second door.
Only no, people can, no, I'm telling you that people can come in through one door and come out through another door. That is one condition. Now I'm telling you ki number of people who are coming in is 10, number of people who are coming out is 15. तो जितना आदमी घुस रहा है उससे ज्यादा आदमी बाहर निकल रहा है. When will that be possible? Only if there is a third door, right? First door से 10 आदमी एंटर किया रूम और सेकंड डोर से 15 आदमी बाहर निकल रहा है, तो वो जो 10 आदमी एंटर किया रूम, जो एक्स्ट्रा 5 आदमी बाहर निकल रहा है, देयर मस्ट बी सम थर्ड डोर जिसके थ्रू वो 5 आदमी भी रूम के अंदर घुसा है ना, क्योंकि बाहर निकलने का एक ही दरवाजा है, गेट नंबर 2, राइट? So this means that when number of particles coming out is more than the number of particles coming in, that is when the flux is greater than 0, it means there is a source present. There is a source which adds more particles. So flux greater than 0 means it indicates the presence of a source that will add more particles to the ones that are already there. All right. On the other hand, if the flux is less than 0, it means there is a sink. So 10 आदमी अंदर आए और 5 आदमी बाहर आए, तो 5 आदमी, they must be staying inside the room. Or if I tell you that it is not possible to stay inside the room, allowed नहीं है रूम के अंदर रहना, तो उसका मतलब है कि 5 आदमी कहीं और दरवाजे से बाहर निकल गए और बाकी 5 they are coming out through the second door. So it means that there is a sink. So greater than 0 means presence of a source, less than 0 means presence of a sink. Only equal to 0 means that the number that came in is equal to the number that came out. And when that is the case, we say that the vector is solenoidal. Very, very important. Okay. A very known vector that all of you have studied in your class 11 and 12 syllabus, a solenoidal vector, is the magnetic field, B. Okay. And remember, at some point of time, you must have read this, that magnetic monopoles do not exist. Magnets always exist as a pair, North Pole and South Pole. You cannot isolate a North Pole and you cannot isolate a South Pole. This is because magnetic fields are solenoidal. Number of lines of force that originate from North Pole must always terminate at South Pole. So they always appear as a bipolar object, whereas electric fields are not solenoidal, which we'll see eventually. So electric fields, electric charges can be present as single charges. We can isolate a single positive charge or a single negative charge, but magnetic poles, North Pole or South Pole, cannot be isolated. Okay. And the third one we'll have to end today. So integration is still left. I'll try to, okay, so next class will be devoted. Actually 5 lectures have been given to this vector analysis and the rest have been given to electrostatics. So this is our third class. So yes, 4 lectures are required. So we'll do curl today and then finish off, and then we'll do integration in the next class. So if we have a differentiable vector field, then the curl is defined like this. Okay, you simply take the cross product of the del operator with the v vector. You know the formula of the cross product, ijk, first row of determinant, second row of determinant are now these partial derivatives, del x, del y, del z, and third row is v1, v2, v3. Okay, so this is the formula for the curl of a vector, and as you can see that this is a vector, this is not a scalar. Curl is a vector. Okay, if the curl of a vector comes out to be 0, if you calculate the curl and see that the curl is 0, then we say that the vector field is irrotational. Very, very important again. If someone tells you that a vector field is irrotational, you will have to understand that he means that the curl of that particular vector is 0. Also, if a vector is irrotational and its curl is 0, we say that the vector field is conservative. Okay. Now, quickly we see what physical interpretation of the curl is. See, we know that linear velocity of an object is equal to omega cross r, where omega is angular velocity. So if you take curl of the linear velocity, so you are basically taking curl of omega cross r. So curl of this cross product. Alright. So if you do this, if you work this out, then you will see that curl v comes out to be twice the vector omega. So the angular velocity of an object is equal to half of curl v. Alright. So if curl v is 0, it means that there is no angular motion. Okay, so curl means rotation. Basically the term curl, all of you know what a curl means, number of curls on a screw. A girl has curly hair. Okay, so curl basically means spirals, rotation. So when curl is 0, it means that it does not have angular velocity. Okay, curl gives the angular velocity of rotation. So if for flow of a liquid, curl v at a point is the measure of the angular velocity of the fluid. Alright, and curl v equal to 0 means the velocity field is irrotational. Curl v equal to 0 means there is no rotational motion. Curl v equal to 0 means omega is 0, that is angular velocity is 0, which means there is no rotational motion in that region. That is the meaning of curl of a vector. Okay, so only if you have a gradient in the velocity, there will be a angular motion related. So see, this is just a little bit of very simple pictures to try to make you understand what curl is. So suppose we have water movement. Okay, so these lines represents the flow of water, different layers. So as you can see that here there is a constant velocity, streamlined flow, constant velocity, no velocity variation. So if you keep a small plastic wheel like this, since there is constant velocity, though, so the wheel will just stay like that. It will move with the water, but it will not rotate. Placing a light toy wheel will not result in rotation of the wheel. Whereas if you now consider flow of water, where still the velocities are parallel to each other, but there is a change in the value. There is a great direction is same, but the magnitude is different. Okay, still streamline flow, but velocity variation is present. So now if you place a small plastic wheel, see the force on this edge will be more than the force on this edge. So there will be a net torque present, and hence there will be rotation. So variation of velocity results in rotation. Suppose the water is flowing around a corner. So even if the magnitude remains same, there will be change in direction. So there will be variation in the velocity. Okay. So if you place the wheel over here, there will be rotation of the wheel. Now let us consider a vortex. All of you have seen a vortex, I hope, in a pond or at least in a sink. If you remove the plug of a sink, the water goes down in spirals. I hope you have noticed. If you have not, then just do it and try to notice. Okay, water goes down in a spiral. Now if you place, so velocity variation is present. So if you place a plastic wheel, there will be rotation. What I am trying to say is that there will be rotational motion only when there is a velocity variation. So curl is related to rotational movement of bodies. A field which is not irrotational, that is which is rotational, is called a vortex field. Okay, so that more or less covers gradient, divergence and curl. I'll end the class today and we'll do integration of vectors in the next class. Okay.